So, Eimear, welcome. Eimear Rabbitt, welcome to Crime World for your debut. And you've managed to insult plus compliment Niall within the first few seconds of your arrival.
That's just daily life with me and Niall, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Behind every compliment is a little dig into the kidney area.
You told me look good on screen.
Yeah.
And that's sort of, I just immediately went, whoa. Yeah.
I actually thought that was a nice thing to say because we're not usually that nice to each other.
It is a nice thing by Eimear Rabbitt standards.
Yeah.
I genuinely meant that as a compliment. I didn't say you look bad off screen either.
No, there is an inevitable implication, isn't there?
Now, we're here today to talk about, and I'm going to have to really control myself here today because we had a discussion about this in the office the other day about this new RTE show, The Gone, a crime drama, which is a kind of a story set between Dublin and New Zealand. Mainly it's set in New Zealand and a couple go missing. Turns out that the mother of the young girl is a judge from the Special Criminal Court who's put away a gangster, and an Irish detective travels over to New Zealand to help with the investigation, okay? So there it is. But into the middle of it, and from the first episode, trudges this female crime journalist who, until I watched it, you guys had said, this one is typical, sort of the way crime female journalists are depicted on the screen. Now, I have actually reached out to the writers of this, and I'll come back to what they have to say about it at some point during the discussion. But let's first of all discuss a little bit of the plot and what she's doing in it.
Yes, so The Gone starts in Dublin, where this detective, I think he's a 20-year career, his name is Richter. Theo Richter, so his dad is German because people are wondering why is an Irish cop called Richter, and he is basically leaving the guards, and it's not really explained why, but he seemed to have some kind of traumatic incident, and then he is approached by I think it's a superintendent, and asked, why are you doing this, you're ruining your career. And it's Christmas in Dublin, and he leaves the pub and tells them I'm gone, and then he's seen stumbling down, I think it might be Mary Street or in and around Jervis Street area.
Looks all right, isn't it?
Yeah, and basically he said he comes across this group of thugs and he starts something with them, and then he goes to swing in and he gets beaten up. Yeah. And what happened? This is the very start, and what happens is then he's beaten up on the ground, and as he's riding on the ground, his phone rings, and it says it's a Special Criminal Court judge all the way from New Zealand, and says, she's gone, my daughter's missing. Yeah. So then fast forward to New Zealand, and he flies over as the guard liaison, and then it's not really... He
gets off the plane and he's met by the detective on the ground there. Yeah. Sort of a Maori background.
Exactly, yeah. And then it's very much kind of more of a New Zealand story, like it's in a very rural area.
Beautiful scenery.
Gorgeous scenery,
It looks great, the programme. Like it is shot beautifully.
Yeah.
And of course, New Zealand is a place where a lot of things are shot because of the scenery. Yeah. And I believe they have similar sort of tax incentives for filming that we have here and all the rest of it, which could be behind the kind of this
joint effort
thing.
So the background of the Irish link to it then is that there's this criminal cartel in Ireland that the judge has put away called the Fallon cartel, and this guy called Derry Fallon is seen as the main head, Daniel Kinahan type, like if you want. And she has put him away, and she had been under threat by him. I think she may have been kidnapped at one point in the past. So the concern is that he's behind the kidnap of the daughter and the boyfriend. But then all these other storylines come into it too, about how there's this tech company have developed on Sacred Mary lands and the locals are not happy. The boyfriend, there's a modern twist to it then where the boyfriend is an influencer, and then it comes out that he was on steroids and had been selling drugs.
Not a great thing, I thought, if you're trying to live slightly under the radar or undercover, to go out with a guy who's an Instagram sensation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's very true. Yeah, and
throwing that out there.
So they're always careful on social media.
No, indeed.
And then there's references to their relationship maybe not being as great as it seems. So there's a lot of, it almost gets a bit confusing at times. So the Irish angle is the cartel link, but there's other kind of possibilities of what may have happened to the couple. So it very much becomes more about the police officers, the Richter, the Irish guy, and the New Zealand girl, and they have a lot of trauma in their past. And
so in the middle of it all, we have what myself and Eimear plough away on slavingly every day. The image of SundayWorld.com pops up as a female reporter.
Yeah.
Starts off, her initial thing is she
flies out obviously from Ireland to New Zealand and gets put up in a hotel for an amount of time, which is probably weeks. And
can I just call out something that Pat Stacey, so he obviously TV critic and a group journalist, he said he wrote a review which wasn't that complimentary, but he describes Aileen Ryan is the reporter's name, the kind of journalist who exists only inside scriptwriters' heads, is supposed to work for the Sunday World. I doubt any of my colleagues in Ireland's oldest tabloid has ever submitted an expenses claim for a 37,000 kilometre round trip to New Zealand. Now, there may have been a few that have gone close to that we won't name, but
it's a long time in the past.
It certainly is.
Yeah,
I mean, that is a funny bit of it, actually, I thought, because she obviously files, I think in the course of the episode I watched, she files one story over a space of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And just the idea in modern journalism.
I know Alison Morris, our colleague in Belfast, tweeted me last night to say that was she living in a penthouse and just filing one story a year?
Yeah.
But I mean, they're the kind of funny sort of, I suppose, characteristics that you see, and obviously unrealistic. But for me, I think from the beginning, now the show producers and writers will say that this character develops, and we will say that we have seen 2 episodes we've watched. But from the beginning, she arrives on the scene and she is this deeply dislikable character who is unethical, immoral, who starts and is introduced to us through a phone call where she pretends to be the mother of a victim of crime who's gone missing and is looking for information by falsely portraying themselves.
Yeah.
They heard of the press ombudsman?
No.
Exactly. Yeah, or the press council, or or all the legal team that you have to go through, and not to mention editorial calls. Yeah,
And your morals.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it's the soulless sort of portrayal of a reporter, when we've seen this many times, that they'll do anything for a story. And I don't think people realise how difficult it is to get some stories into print, and and just that people we're human creatures as well, and obviously we have that moral compass too. So.
I mean, the idea of phoning up in the middle of a disappearance in this case, but I mean, it's obviously developing possibly into a murder inquiry, to claiming to be a relative, is unheard of.
Beyond and also then obviously there is the bit where she seems to have hacked into an account.
She's hacked into a Visa account or something,
and she found that 20 grand had gone missing from the judge's account. And she passes this information on to Richter, who's the guard over there. So she's obviously passing information to a guard. And also there's other elements that come out too, that she's recording people without their knowledge.
Yeah.
That she was in a relationship with Richter as well, which is probably
typical.
something we can talk about. And that that there's like various different elements about how she is trying to get information from another criminal contact, and she agrees to drop a story, so he'll give her the address of this Derry Fallon guy. So it's completely unethical.
See, it's a funny thing, I think, because that's a thing that female journalists, particularly crime journalists, face, is the sexualization bit of it. Like with Veronica Guerin, right? That's what people, utterly wrongly. But that's always what they always threw at her.
You'd be amazed who has suggested to me that Veronica Guerin was sleeping her way around the Dublin underworld. I mean, disgusting. But people like that, you would be, I mean, you're left agog that they would even suggest that. Oh, I heard this.
Yeah.
I mean, that would never be said about a man.
No, nobody has ever suggested I slept my way to the top, did they?
Eimear, he was having a conversation with me on the phone on the way in, right? He was obviously
Niall.
He was obviously in the middle of the newsroom or something, and he came out with that. And you don't hear of male journalists sleeping their way to the top, and he was overheard again out of context.
And
then you're making it worse for us, because they're probably thinking, who in the Sunday World is that?
But like on a really basic level, right? But like we all work in journalism. There's crime reporters, some female, some male, and of all the female crime reporters, I've heard that said of them at some stage or another about sleeping their way to success with whoever. And I've never, ever heard that said about a male journalist. And like, that's not some sort of wild PC right on point. That is just a fact.
Yeah.
And so you look at these shows, it's a TV show, but it's I suppose what they call it is the trope of female journalists, and that is one that is always thrown in there, and it's never thrown in with male journalists. Just
Never.
isn't, like,
No, I mean, I undoubtedly, and I have heard the same. I absolutely reckon that every female journalist in this town, if you were to believe the rumours, has just slept their way through the criminal underworld, the Garda Síochána, and the the judicial system probably as well, and the upper echelons of the editorial system, because that's also said about female journalists, that they sleep their way to a promotion and all this. It's deeply unfair and untrue, and you know, these portrayals again and again of this, this unethical, charmless, unprofessional, immoral seductress out there trying to get a story, no matter what, at all costs and in any way possible.
It's not the reality, really.
No, it's not. And you see, like, even the hardened journalists, like, this has been my experience. Like, people sometimes, things happen in journalism, people might even regret that they happen, or do things that they regret or whatever. But this, and obviously there's been huge things in the Leveson inquiry, which would touch on some of the things that are in this program.
Like the hacking.
Though they are obviously a thing of the past. I mean, even at the very extreme end of red top publishing across the world, those things are gone as a result of what happened. But is that a portrayal that you recognise of journalists just not caring? Like, I don't recognise that. Even kind of hardened crime reporters.
Yeah.
The what would you call it?
No.
It's soul searching that goes on.
Yeah.
Because it's not a natural human instinct to have to go up and ask someone whose child has died in a crash or whose child has been murdered and ask them, intrude on their privacy and ask them, do they want to speak? Like, that just, I don't think that comes natural to anybody. And it's a difficult thing to do, but there's obviously a public interest side of it, and you're trying to see if they want to tell their story in a fair way. And it's a necessary part of the job, unfortunately, as well. So I think people don't seem to realise that. And these portrayals don't help, because there's just this soulless aspect to it, or something that...
Completely. And in actual fact, to go out on the ground in a situation, like, I know this is fictional situation, but there's a missing couple, obviously their loved ones fear they're dead, to actually place yourself into that emotions and all of that charged emotions, you have to be a communicator, actually, and it is really difficult. And some people do want to talk and they want to use the media to seek help, and you have to be there to offer them that door in. But it is really difficult dance, and you have to know when to pull away, how to absolutely remove yourself from the scene, how to kind of approach people, usually through an intermediary, who you'll, on a scene like that, you discover who that was. Sometimes in Ireland in the past, a lot of the time it's been a priest.
There's 2 people this week alone that I've been in contact by email, actually, that have suffered a loved one dying of a violent death. And both of them have interacted with the Sunday World because they want something to be presented.
Yeah.
Now, that's just the way it is. Some people do want it. Now, there's no doubt that some people find it really traumatic to be approached by journalists. And you can't blame that. That is just the way it is. But the idea that it happens casually and that people are trampled over, like, maybe some things that's, I don't think, realistic,
No, I mean, it's an ability to read the room as well, and and again, really, do journalists approach anymore? I know they certainly did in the past, grieving relatives. You kind of always reach out to them in a different way.
Yeah, social media is better for that.
Social media is better for that.
It was more common back in the day. I actually remember my first ever door knock, like 10 years ago, was there was a girl killed in a crash, and it was a really tragic one, and I was sent out with a photographer. It was like the early Herald days, so early in the morning, and trying to find an address. And I think I walked in a precinct confession at one point. It was a very rural area, and eventually we found the house. And of course, I was told to go and see if they want to talk, and that was the done thing at the time. So I went up, and I think the photographer, Ray Cullen was his name, I think he had sympathy for me, so he came up to the door with me, because he was like, this girl doesn't know what she's doing. And we knocked on the door, and it opened, and I think it might have been an aunt to the girl, and she said, oh, come on in. She thought we were mourners. And I looked at Ray in panic, and Ray obviously had experience and said, no, and he made it clear we were media, and then the door was closed. But like, that was, and it kind of just the parallels then of this journalist in the gone ringing and pretending to be
A relative.
a relative to get a story, because obviously, like, as soon as they made it clear they didn't want to speak, and you have to make it fully clear that everyone knows you're a journalist
Exactly.
as well. But like, it wasn't a nice thing, but that I was told to do that, and
we
did it,
talk
but,
about nowadays and the
you know.
social media and exactly that. You can, it's a gentler way really to send a message to family, leave them a number if they do want to contact or, you know, whatever.
Mhm.
Also, that intermediary still exists in situations, you know, whether it's
Yeah.
a family friend, a local politician is often the person to kind of approach and just say, listen, if they want to talk, we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're happy to come out and sit down with them.
And we
And you
have had
need-
many cases of people who have been receptive to
Yeah.
that and who have developed relationships with media, with journalists then, and they come back to them to, you know, maybe promote a charity cause or something like
Yeah.
that. And they do actually appreciate that. So some people might understand why you actually approach people in the first place. But
Yeah.
I do think people should get the opportunity.
They should.
you
And
know.
in
Yeah.
cases
And-
of unsolved murders and stuff like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
they often will come back to the media because there's an anniversary or something coming
Yeah.
up and they want their loved one's murder, disappearance not to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And, you know, there is always that opportunity that somebody out there knows something, you know.
And of course, the
They've saw
Gardaí
something.
use, and certainly in missing persons cases, they use the media as
Yeah.
well to highlight the fact. But that's not to say that people haven't been approached wrongly or that some people find it deeply traumatic and upsetting. Of course they do.
So our character is, you know, she is a sexualized female
Yeah.
who is tramping over the top of everybody to try and get a story, who's breaking every rule in the journalistic book, but she's actually just following a long line of sort of Hollywood depictions of the female journalist and the crime journalist. As long as they're sleeping with someone, they're interesting.
Yeah.
You know, they're ruthless, they're ambitious, they're incompetent largely.
Yeah.
And we've plenty of them to, you know, to talk about. But I suppose, Eimear, I was like, when we started, you know, when I started looking at this and sort of researching it a little bit, I would get more and more angry because I was just thinking, like, as journalists, we always sort of try and fight for everybody else's rights and everything. And yet we are constantly still being depicted as these people in, you know, okay, fictional dramas, but nonetheless, like, even Barbie was brought into the modern world this year.
That's very true. Yeah, yeah. And I even get questions from family and friends. You know, like, "Oh, be careful, she'll put you in the paper." I think people don't realize what we do and the hoops you jump to get a story in and all that. So I just think there is a lack of understanding about what.
But is that because of these constant depictions of that?
Possibly, yeah, because I suppose by your nature, like when you're out trying to get a story and talk to contacts, you're not going to divulge that. So maybe the public, there's a bit of a gap there between what people know and what actually happens. And then, then people are looking to maybe the screen to see. And it's just not. Maybe before my time, it could have been different, but it's definitely not what I've experienced.
I think, like, if you look at, say, House of Cards, I don't know if you watched that.
Yes.
I think it's Zoe Barnes.
Zoe Barnes, yes.
Yeah.
And I know a Zoe Barnes who's nothing like her. I just want to
Okay, like, point that
say
out.
that. Yeah.
So she's a classic female journalist in one of these dramas, which was like a great program, certainly the first couple of series. And, you know, they had really the light and dark of the political characters. They were very rounded. You know, they were obviously bad people, but there was good and bad points and all of that. But like Zoe Barnes was really, really one-dimensional. Like she certainly slept with the politician for stories.
Yeah.
She was glamorous. I remember she went to work for a publication and they were saying to her, "Don't check anything, just bash it up as quickly as possible." Do you remember that? And she was sitting on a beanbag at one point during it. And she was actually told by her editor, no, don't check anything. We just need to get everything up as quickly as possible. Whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That was actually a conversation, which even in the States where things are less litigious, that doesn't happen. So like she was a real classic example, you know, because there tend to be...
Well, she was so sexualized.
Yeah,
she was just literally using her sexuality to get herself anywhere in the job.
Yeah.
And it is a very one-dimensional portrayal because I often wonder, you know, the way when people talk about playing certain characters, they might go like an abuse victim or even a sports person, they go into the particular areas and look at them. And I just wonder what they're looking at to portray a reporter because it is very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
You see in The Gone, the guards have their backstories that go into their different traumas and maybe, I know the writer had told you that they are going to explore this character more. But from what I've seen, it is, again, to use Niall's words, one-dimensional.
What about the traumatized guard? How does he?
Oh yeah, I
how
mean
does he
that's
show
another
the
typical-
trauma though.
I knew you'd pick up on that.
And he got a hurl and wiped the ball against the wall.
And he does something really weird with his ribs as well.
I think that's from when he was beaten up by the kids.
Well, what's he poking at it for? I mean, it's sore anyway.
Did you not see that bit where
I knew Niall would comment on
internal turmoil of the soul is depicted by him whacking a hurl against the wall?
Well, you haven't seen the second episode where he tells the Maori character that his the best memories of his life were achieved in Crow Park.
That gives us the Irish element.
I actually, there's cliché.
Like
But maybe it's not just the reporters who get the cliched overall. Is there any ones that you've liked? Reporter portrayals.
Oh, my favorite movie, one of my favorite journalist movies is Spotlight.
Yeah, which is brilliant. Which is about
great. And Rachel McAdams' character, like, you know, it's obviously it's about it's a very dark subject, and it's about exposing the abuse of Catholic priest abuse in the Boston area, but there's elements to it where, you know, they're just working like dogs, which we all know well. And then, you know, she finds it hard to go to church with her grandmother and things like that probably would affect you as a journalist. It's just a little bit, and it doesn't go into, you know, any kind of salaciousness.
No, it actually shows some of the dullness of breaking a big story in it, like, because going into checking files, looking at
exactly, yeah. And I actually read an article written by an American journalist, and she actually referenced Spotlight. She was obviously criticizing the sexualization of female journalists by Hollywood, and she references Spotlight and said her children turned to her afterwards and said, they're just on their phones all the time. And it was almost like she was kind of suggesting then that this is a realization by film producers that they have to make them more interesting. And that's why they bring in they think bringing in a relationship is going to do that, because the reality of it is, you're on your phone all the time. You're like working long hours, and you're not probably going to be talking a lot to people about what you're doing, because by the nature of it.
By the nature of it, you can't.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like from a monetary point of view, you know, quality of life thing, Harry Bradshaw, I mean, it would be quite nice.
It would be,
write a couple of articles every couple of months.
Exactly, yeah.
And live in a brownstone in Manhattan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you see when Nicola had a go at you for...
Manola Blahniks, all the way.
Exactly.
See when Nicola had a go at you for slagging me off? I'll tell you a little story about expenses since you brought it up.
Oh, Jesus, what's this about?
So recently, myself and Nicola were going after a big conference at lunch, let's put it that way. Okay. And I was walking back and we were talking about expenses, have to file expenses.
Are you going to expense your bento box?
And she said, and Nicola said to me, I said, well, you know, I approve your expenses. And she said, oh, that's a farce. I was like, you don't have to say that to me. Because he wasn't even trying to be funny. That's ridiculous.
You're never not going to approve her expenses, though.
But I might now.
Give him a proper, responsible job. To me, seems kind of ridiculous, does it not?
What if a flight to Auckland came up on her expenses?
Yeah, what would you do? What did you drop?
I reported to the company.
You'd report me to the company?
No.
But I mean, can you imagine actually, like, I mean, it's just that lifestyle as well is so funny, you know, sometimes. I mean, that's the lighter side of it. These journalists have these really glamorous lifestyles. They're, you know, in and out of, maybe if we had done a different type of journalism, but they're in and out of all these launches, and they're dressed so beautifully, and they have such an amazing lifestyle, and they don't bulk if a cocktail is $40. You know what I mean?
Did you ever watch Devil Wears Prada?
Yes.
Yeah, that's, you know, she goes in as a news reporter writing about protests and has this idyllic ambition to be a hard-hitting news reporter and gets a job as a PA for, and this, it's basically meant to be the
Vogue.
You know, Vogue. She's meant to be depicting Anna Wintour, and it turns into, you know, it changes her personality, but she gets amazing wardrobes, and she gets to go to Paris Fashion Week.
We don't get any of that, just in case anybody is of the you know, belief that we do. But I was looking last night. So there's the International Women's Media Foundation. This is where this kind of gets really serious, this issue, right? And they talk about the you know, these sexualized female journalists, how that sort of image of that is persisting through these dramatizations in Hollywood movies, right? And there's an Eliza Lee Munoz of the above organization, which is the International Women's Media Foundation. And she said that the sexist stereotypes about women in the media has real consequences for female reporters who regularly face gender-based harassment and abuse. They carried out a survey in 2018 of 600 female journalists around the world. 2/3 of them said they had been harassed and threatened online, and more than a quarter said they had been physically assaulted, right? And this lady, Lise Munoz, says that it's driving women out of the profession. Now, on a very serious note, in this country, there has been a special sort of Garda liaison committee set up because of the levels of abuse female journalists are getting.
Yeah, and it's a particular type. Like male journalists also get abuse, but they get a different character of abuse, really. Like, because, we obviously see these things through the job. It's for women, it's always sexual threats, sexual comments. It's just almost universally goes to that. Men will get, will obviously get threats on social media, but it's a different character, like totally, you know what I mean? And women do face that sense of, it angers people that they're out there having a voice. Like, that is the truth. Female journalists, there are a small group of people, I suppose, who get angry that women are out there.
And the thing is that can be very upsetting for younger women, I think. Maybe age is with me on this. I just completely ignore that sort of stuff. I would delete, block, whatever, if I even bother. Most of the time I just don't, because I think my years on this planet have taught me that if somebody is just coming at you with that, it's their problem and not yours. You know what I mean? So I would never take it as something that, I would question myself about or anything. Now, some, proper criticism, of course, I will take and I'll go, right, we shouldn't have said that, shouldn't have done that. I'm perfectly open to being criticised if it's got a foundation. But this sort of stuff that, comments on your looks, whatever. But for younger women in journalism, that would be very, very damaging. I mean, seriously awful that whenever they speak out, they write an article, they put something up on social media. And we've heard loads of women in journalism who've come down off social media, who've really been traumatized by their experiences of these faceless creatures who feel that they can just load their shit on them.
Yeah, of course. And it's all, there's no escape from it now because of social media. And you can't not be on social media when you're a journalist nowadays as well. So you have to sort of face it. And you cannot read comments, but like there's always going to be some way for them to get at you. And I suppose it's, as we all know, journalism isn't the easiest of professions to begin with anyway, especially when you're coming into it nowadays because they're long hours and low pay and all of these kind of things. And a lot of people do it because of their interest and their passion. But if you're getting all of this abuse on top of that,
and as the International Women's Media Foundation says, it's driving women out of the profession.
Of course.
And certainly it's a big issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, like that new Garda committee, which was specially set up for that, I mean, there's already been very serious reports, one in particular, which is before the courts that we can't go into. But plenty of reports of harassment of women. And there is a kind of an attitude that it's no longer going to be tolerated. It will be criminally investigated where necessary. And for all those reasons, I'm a lot older than you, Eimear. When I went into journalism, you went in and the only thing you were giving of yourself was your name on a paper. And I don't know whether readers really, the byline.
No.
They didn't connect with that. Whereas now, like you say, you're going in and you're having to give more of yourself. You have to give your face, your identity. You have to give a little bit of your personality.
Yeah, exactly. And media organisations, rightly, they want to promote sort of young women and different views. The newspapers and all media companies, they're always looking for younger people with different views to society, maybe controversial views. Some of that, could be sort of regarded as woke politics. So they like people to come out there, young women, and give strong opinions. But as soon as they do, they're absolutely targeted in a way that men aren't. It's just a fact, there's just no doubt about it.
Yeah, and female politicians, and there's obviously other areas too where women are targeted. But
true, yeah.
And also some people, it's a funny thing because in another way, our culture moves to a sense where people aren't openly abusive in the same way as they might have been when we were younger, where it was a bit more tolerance of it. But there's what's happening, I think, ultimately what will happen with social media companies is that there will be further regulations over the next few years. And I think this thing will be sort of gradually clamped down on. But at the moment, there's almost there's very little that can be done really, or will be done if you make a complaint to a social media company about something that's up there. It's really, really difficult to get it down. I mean, that's even with the weight of a media organisation behind you. And we know that, like.
Mm-hmm. Will you watch The Gone? Will you watch more of it? Now, it's on Sunday night, and it's RTE have, co-funded this, obviously, with a New Zealand network. So this is taxpayers' money that has gone into this drama, which there has been some criticism of the fact that it is really all about New Zealand, and there is this sort of the token Irishness in it, and is this good use of the taxpayers' money?
Yeah. I will watch it again because I suppose it's a thriller in the sense that the couple are kind of forgotten in many parts of it, but I am intrigued to see what happened to them, so I'll watch it for that reason. But yeah, there's a lot of there's too many plot lines going on. It can be quite confusing, and I think I will stick with it just because of that particular intrigue. But it's definitely not. It's not a crime drama in the sense of like a love-hate or even kin or anything like that. It's more of a murder mystery, and it goes into Maori culture and New Zealand's a lot more than
they make a great effort to handle the Maori culture well, right? They have obviously written that really carefully and done very positive depictions of that, and probably quite detailed. They haven't given the Sunday World the same, the poor old Sunday World.
And we didn't we didn't mention I think the second episode you can see the news app with the Sunday World's logo 3 times during it, so it is obviously very, very clear who she's writing for.
Bloody home.
Now,
I want to just read out a little bit of this email that I got back from Keeper Pictures, who are the producers of this, the makers of this show. And they said, "Hi, Nicola, thank you for your email. Can we ask you if you're basing your opinions on just the first episode of Gone?" No, I'm not. I've watched 2. If you haven't had an opportunity to view all episodes, we'd really appreciate if you gave us the benefit of viewing all 6 episodes of Series 1 before making a decision on the character. Now, I'll just read I'm not going to read the whole thing, but she says here that like the rest of the drama in The Gone, we've introduced Aileen Ryan's character in a way that wrong foots the audience, which we then spend the rest of the episodes breaking down / changing. In episode 1, due to the story setup, Aileen is introduced mainly through the viewpoint of our lead male Irish character. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I think she's introduced as herself. I mean,
he doesn't want her there.
He doesn't want her there, but she's very sort of bolshy, and she walks into the middle of a council meeting without even introducing herself as well.
Yeah, well, she's very much introduced as a fly in the ointment, and
And but anyway, so basically what they're saying is that the way it may feel there are tropes to how she's presented at first, but this is something we play with and flip. So the reason I'm going to continue watching it is because I can't imagine how you could flip this character, how you could change those sort of early starters, those absolute imbalances with the real world of crime reporting, of being a journalist out on a story, that you would misrepresent yourself as a relative of a victim, that you would hack into somebody's financial accounts, and that you would then, of course, be sleeping with the detective on the case.
No, they're not. I don't think he said the way he references it is there was something, but there's not anymore. But then she called into they're staying in the same hotel, and she called into his room, and he's topless. And then he says, I think she says, "I'm not here to whatever.
I'm not here for a shag." I think
I'm not. Well, I'm not approving that expense. That's all I'm going to say.
And then it procedes to her saying that we used to work really well together, which is another element of that's
Yes.
I hope they don't flip her, the flipping that they're speaking about there doesn't involve her realizing I was wrong all the time to be a journalist, and I'm going to be a good person instead.
I'm going to be a charity.
No, I'm going to be something else instead. So let's see.
Or the flipping is that she becomes key to the solving of the thing through her nasty and vile character.
But I know we were talking about the reality of reporting, but also just the reality of what would happen in that kind of situation. I don't want to give it away too much, but the last scene, I was telling you about this earlier, is where she's in her pajamas and she's
silky, you said.
Silky pajamas, and
no journalist could afford.
They've been looking for this cartel leader. They find out that he's in New Zealand, and she was trying to track him down, but basically he turns up, and I don't know if I'm supposed to say tax.
No, you can say it because it's
and so that's not even, is that not realistic? I don't know if it's for journalists. I don't know if it does go a little bit into the kind of bizarre I have to say, but I will continue to watch it. Just
well,
to
let's
how it
see, and
plays
maybe
out.
we'll totally change our minds and we'll come on here and we'll
Yeah,
just
maybe.
say she's a wonderful depiction of a female crime journalist.
Yeah.
Who knows? And Niall Donald, you just keep signing those expenses.
I will.
baby.
And Nicola is she's
I'm
our
gonna-
Lois Lane, isn't she? She's not our. What's her
gonna have
name?
to start-
Eileen Ryan.
If you approve my expenses, I'm going to have to start.
No,
putting
no,
on him.
no.
Eileen Ryan, like that's not even a good name for a
No.
journalist.
No.
No,
Is
he
it Eileen
gets the
Ryan?
name Richter, and
Yeah, and she
no.
gets no, it's Aileen, is it?
Aileen
Not
Ryan.
Eileen.
Aileen
Aileen Ryan is just
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, can we? Yeah, but there is a good decent cast though. I don't know if you looked, but the Richard Flood, he's the actor who plays Richter. He was in Grey's Anatomy.
I saw that. He did a
Yeah.
good role in that. He was a doctor.
He was a doctor. Yeah,
He looks like a
he's-
doctor.
He does look like a doctor. Yeah, and
The tattoos are
he
making him
kind of
look
looks like
rough.
a guard. I think he'd kind of
Meathead?
give him a.
He doesn't look like any guard. does
I
he?
think so.
if somebody like that stops you and gives you penalty
As
points.
soon as he took a slither out of his bag and started using Hurley, Niall took
I'm
against
telling
him.
you now, they don't stop you giving you penalty points looking like that, Eimear.
Yeah.
Maybe in your
Okay.
world.
Right. Well, listen,
Okay.
we'll keep an open mind.
Keep an open mind.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.